Welcome back to the Church Musician's Assistant. My name is Hannah Cruz. Have you ever thought to yourself, I just don't understand why my congregation seems to love some things that I do and complain about other things? Or, I don't understand why my choir doesn't value the same things that I do. Why do they not care about the same things that I care about? Or same goes maybe for your staff, the other people on your worship team. Well, these kinds of questions can often cause a lot of tension between us and the people we work with in church. It can cause a lot of misunderstanding. It can be a barrier to music ministry, which is what we're all about here. So I find that the crux of the problem is culture. It's church culture. So maybe your own personal culture, the one you grew up with or the one you have learned to love, does not align completely with the church culture that you are, that you're amidst right now, wherever you're working, wherever you're a member. And so there's a disconnect. I can totally relate to this feeling because I have only been at my church for about a year now, and that was during the pandemic. So it's been tough to get to know people and to understand what this church is all about. So the choir and I had a meeting the other day. We called it Choir Brainstorming Day. And if you want to find out more about what we did, I will link a video I made last week about Choir Brainstorming Day and how to affect change this coming year. I'll link that in the description box. But one thing we did was talk about the culture of our choir and of our congregation. We talked about where we're at and where we want to be and where we want to go this year. We used this awesome diagram from a book called The Next Worship. This is a really fantastic book. I recommend it. It's by Sandra Maria Van Opstal. I hope I said her name correctly. It's Appendix A in the back here. It's called the Cultural Values Continuum. And we used this as a launching point for our discussion about like our mission of the choir and our goals for this year. And I just want to share with you what we found when we discussed this together as a choir and what ideas kind of led from this discussion of culture. Van Opstal breaks down culture, church culture, into 8 different characteristics. Communication, so how clear is your communication? Emotion, is emotion readily expressed or is it more restrained? Relationships and trust. Do close relationships in your congregation follow from doing tasks together? Or do tasks like mission and community works, do those sorts of things follow from relationships that have already been made? Identity. Does identity come from the individual and from self? Or does it come more from the community? Rules. Are rules heavily enforced and universal? Like, you know, it doesn't matter the circumstances, we will always fall back to the rule? Or do rules vary more on context? So are rules fluctuating based on what's going on at the time? Environment. Is the congregation willing to change the environment depending on context, or do they expect others and the world around them to adapt to their environment? Status. Do the congregants tend to trust their leaders because of their position, perhaps? Or do they respect people based more on accomplishment and what they've demonstrated that their skills are? And then the last characteristic is time. Does the church value strict control of the time in worship. For example, if the service starts at 10, do they expect it to promptly end at 11 or 11:15? Or is the congregation, do they expect the service to last as long as the Spirit calls? So, it could ebb and flow depending on how people are feeling that day. And we as a choir, we talked through each one. We decided where we thought we were. So we put a little mark on the continuum in red where we thought we were, and then decided the green mark is where we would like to be. So on each one of these characteristics, we decided we needed to move a little bit in each direction. Some of them we needed to make a lot of change, and some of them not that much. Like we felt like we were in a good place right there. And this is going to be different for every congregation. So for communication, we felt like we were kind of in the middle, but we struggled a little bit with communication. We didn't always say what we were thinking, so we need to move a little bit more in the direction of being clear and concise. Under emotions, we felt like as a congregation we're pretty restrained. It is a Presbyterian traditional community, so that's not really surprising, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. In a lot of religious communities, restraint is the way that you show respect and honor. But we did want to move a little bit in the direction of expressing emotion, and we felt like as the choir, as the music ministry, we had a real responsibility and opportunity to do that, because music has this power to move people, right? So that's an area where we can make a difference through music. Relationships, we felt like for our congregation, oftentimes relationships are formed first, and then tasks or service follows from those relationships, and we kind of like it that way. If you relate this to the choir, that would mean like, friendships are formed within the choir, and because of that, then people return to choir and they perform on Sundays, right? But we did want to move it a little bit more towards relationships following from task, especially in the choir, because we want to make people who are not in the choir yet feel comfortable to come and enter that group without feeling like, they have to be buddy with someone to fit in. So we want to make everyone feel welcome. Identity. Our identity is heavily formed from community. Again, it's kind of relating back to what I just said about relationships. Our congregation is very close. A lot of them have been there for generations, like multiple generations of a family have been going to this church, and so they're very close in that way. But to make it feel very welcoming to outsiders who don't know anyone there, don't know the history, we do want to encourage people in the congregation and the choir to take ownership and to have their own ideas and to be their own individuals. Rules. So we are a very traditional old church. We are 200 years old actually this year, which is incredible and very exciting. We will have a big celebration, but that does mean that we tend to have rules, right? Rules, aka tradition in this context. And sometimes that can be a hindrance to adapting to our environment, our downtown location, and just the groups of people who maybe need our Christian support right now. So as a choir, we do want to work on trying to get out of our shells and try new things. Environment. Are we open to change, or do we expect people to adapt? Now those are the two extremes, but probably we lean more towards hoping people will adapt to our culture. And so in the same vein of being welcoming to our outside communities and relaxing on the rules a little bit, we do want to move slightly towards changing where changes are necessary in our congregation. But there are some things we could do to welcome communities who are not currently represented in status. So people tend to respect those who have a title or who have degrees in this congregation. You know, the respect comes from that first, and then as a person accomplishes things and shows that they are capable, then the congregation respects them even more. We didn't necessarily think that was a bad thing, except we did want to be open to allowing people to impact our worship who maybe didn't have a position at all. We wanted to allow them the capability of leading worship and influencing our congregation. The last characteristic is time. So we are very much a regimented church. We like things to start at a certain time and end at a certain time, and that gives us comfort, and that allows us to structure our day. I don't think that we're really looking to change that much, although the choir felt like we could probably be a little bit more open to like a longer prelude, or you know, let's add this song during the prayers because it's appropriate today. And yes, it might make the service go over 5 or 10 minutes, but that's okay. I really hope a lot of church musicians will go through an exercise like this with their choirs or music teams, whoever they work with in their church. I hope this culture discussion can happen because it bridges the divide. It clears up misunderstandings. If you ever feel like you don't understand why the congregation is acting a certain way or thinking a certain way, it's probably because there's a culture clash and not everyone is understanding where they're coming from. So to do this exercise will help you be a better music minister. It will help your choir and your congregation happily follow you as a leader, right? If you can get on board about the church's values, first of all, and figure out where you're at on this cultural continuum, and then you can begin to discuss goals, right? Once you understand where everyone's coming from, then you can move forward and say, you know what, this is where we want to be, and this is, you know, this is how much change we need to make, or this is how much change we need to make. And then after brainstorming some goals, you can actually come up with concrete tasks. And as a group, as a team, y'all can come to that conclusion. And everyone will be on board, right? So you have buy-in from your choir or congregation or staff. And you'll have that support from the very beginning. And I just think that's really integral to creating any kind of long-lasting positive change in your church. Well, I hope this video inspired you. I hope that you'll get together with your choir and do a brainstorming day and talk about your values and your goals. I think it's a really important thing to do every once in a while. And go get this book, The Next Worship. I have no reason to be promoting this except that I just read it and liked it. So go get that, and then you'll have access to the cultural continuum we talked about today. Until next time, I bless you and your music ministries. Bye for now.